If you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
All righty. Good morning, good rising, wherever you are. Good morning. Welcome to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. To get in contact with the show, you know the numbers, but here they are anyway. 516-453-9921. Be sure to depress the number 1 button and you will get in line so that Mr. Fuller may answer your question or your VGQ. If you elect to send me a Gmail, you can do that by going to the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. And at some point, your Gmail will be read. Maybe not today, but it will be read, and I will inform you of that. Chat room is also open. I'm the only one in there right now, but people will get on there. And if you have a question or a comment in that, I will attempt to answer that question for you. You can do that. Thank you to the Gatewood brothers who make sure that we are on, make sure that we sound good. Well, you're not supposed to know this, but Moon Pie, he's checking in with us. So, okay. And then, of course, Robert Gatewood, they make sure that Mr. Fuller and myself are where we are supposed to be. All the books are in. I looked at the website this morning. All the books are in. And speaking of the website, which is producedjustice.com, the December the 28th show on the Carl Nelson show out of Washington, D.C., WOL 1450, is up on the producedjustice.com website. If you would like to hear more of Mr. Fuller, I myself intend to view or listen to that podcast. I will do that. And also, people have been asking me again about one of the YouTube videos or talks that Mr. Fuller had with Dr. Randy Short. It's called Results. You get a little different take on what's going on and hear Mr. Fuller describe about how we must have a code to get the results that we need and quit all this hot air. Yeah, that we tend to blow off results. So you can check that out. But Mr. Fuller is on the Carl Nelson show. As a matter of fact, let me say this. Good morning, Mr. Fuller, and how are you?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
Okay. As I was checking out the podcast on producedjustice.com, where we can get all the books and all the information, as far as you know, concerning, at least as far as today is concerned, you're not scheduled for any broadcast on that show, are you?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Not at this time. Okay. So now you have the latest information on that. Okay. Let me do this as I have lost my screen, see if I can get it back here. Okay, so let's start today's show off with a brother from South Africa. Matter of fact, we've been getting a lot of mail from South Africa, but he says this. This is Brother Lengisi says this. Mr. Fuller, are you planning on or thinking about translating the code book into other languages? I'm asking this because there are many victims of racism who can benefit from the code book, but who cannot read the English language. Enjoy the rest of your day. Best regards from South Africa, Lengisi. Mr. Fuller, are you planning or having the book translated into languages of people's different dialects?
I don't have a plan, but I have a desire to do that. I have told people that eventually that's what I'd like to have done. I won't be around when it happens. I don't think I have that much time, but because it was all that I could do just to get the latest edition out of the revised edition in 2016, and even it wasn't up to the quality that I thought it should be. But I had to get it out because of I don't know about my longevity.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to do a number of things, but that's certainly included in it. And that was included in my wishes, my desires, right from the beginning, because it won't work. The compensatory counter-racist code will not work unless it is a worldwide philosophy and theory and practical application. It's got to apply everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All righty. Well, there you have it, my brother from South Africa. Mr. Fuller is planning at some point to do that, so hopefully that will answer your questions. Okay. 516-453-9921, Chicago in the house. Thank you, Chicago, for being there. Dallas, we got you going. But right now, we're going to go to the 717 area code. That would be our buddy Darnell in PA. Darnell, let me see if I can get you up in here. Okay, got you. Darnell, good morning, and how are you?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. I'm still learning. Good morning, Mr.
All
Fuller.
righty. Yeah, go ahead. You're on. Go ahead.
I have a VGQ and a question, if that's okay with you, Mr. Bobby.
Quickly, yes, sir.
All right. The VGQ is, I was asked by a suspected white supremacist who appeared to be a senior citizen, how was I doing? And I replied, I'm still learning. And then he replied, after a slight chuckle, that, oh, you're still learning? And he said, I'm still teaching. And my question for Mr. Fuller today is, what is the most constructive thought, speech, and action a victim of white supremacy can engage in day in and day out to produce the most constructive result according to the codes? Thank you.
Anything that's going on, if I understand the question. Whatever is going on right in front of you at any given moment, either it's going to produce a constructive result or a non-constructive result. So that's always the fundamental approach to every situation, according to counter-racist codified logic. You just look at what's going on in front of you and ask the question, because all problems are solved through the process of questions and answers. In fact, all progress is made through the process of questions and answers, according to compensatory logic. So you look at every situation and say, now, what is going to be the constructive result of what I see going on right now in front of me? People speaking or acting or doing something, people going here, going there, or you participating in it yourself, doing this, doing that. What's going to be the constructive result? That's what you always keep in mind. Whether you are building a bridge or just sitting down having lunch, you look at what's on the plate and you say to yourself, what I have on this plate, if I transfer it from the plate into my bodily organs, is it going to produce a constructive result or a non-constructive result? Or what I have in this glass on the side, if I drink it, is it going to produce a constructive result or a non-constructive result? Because there's no such thing as in between. It's going to produce one or the other. That's basic compensatory logic. That's what the entire code is about. Constructive, non-constructive. You divide every activity into those categories. And it's real simple if you just look at it like that. That's what you do every day as an individual person. every individual black person, and really ultimately every individual person should do that. Constructive, non-constructive. You can't get lost. You can't wander away from it once you look at everything that way. A bus going down the street, its destination. Is that bus putting out pollution? If you see smoke coming from it and whatnot, that's non-constructive. So we have been told. See, so they need to do something about that. Everything that you look at around you is going to produce a constructive result or a non-constructive result. And you just fix your mind on that and you never lose focus, if I understand the question.
Yeah, I think you did, Mr. Fuller. I think you did.
All right.
Okay. Let me see if I can get the screen up here. Okay, Joshua, thank you, Darnell from PA. I'm having difficulty navigating my screen here. That's why there is a delay in here. While I'm doing that, let me do this. Mr. Fuller, this comes from Armin. I will get you in a minute, Joshua. Says this, good morning, Mr. Fuller. Mr. Fuller, would you say you are a spiritual person? And after you answer that question, could you answer this for me? Could non-white people live in the freedom of their spirit to be free of the prison system of white supremacy? So let's go to the first question first. Armin wanted to know, are you a spiritual person?
Well, first of all, I would have to have a definition. That's why I wrote a word guide, but spiritual person isn't in the word guide that I've written. So the procedure, according to compensatory logic, is the person who uses the term should explain what the term means. Now, I think that the term may mean that I have a spirit, because in answering the question without a definition, I do believe I do have a spirit. I have a body. So the spirit goes with the body. Otherwise, the body doesn't function. So I think I am, in answer to the question, I am a spiritual person. Like everything that moves has a spirit. Otherwise, it can't move. A rock, if it moves on its own, has a spirit. You have to logically assume that. Just a rock sitting on the moon, may sit there for 2 trillion years. And then, for no apparent reason at all, that rock moves 5 inches. It's been sitting in that one space. But it moves 5 inches. Just 5 inches, but it moved on its own. Nothing moved it. So you say, well, that rock may not have had spirit before, but it's got something in it now because it moved on its own without any outside force causing it to move. The other rocks didn't move, but that particular rock moved 5 inches. So that rock has acquired something in it that you can call spirit. Why? Because it moves on its own without any apparent outside, there's nothing attached to it, nothing pushed it. So, in answer to the question, I consider myself a person, like all persons who are what you call, quote, unquote, alive, have spirits, plus creatures, insects, birds, anything that moves on its own. You can reasonably come to the conclusion, logical conclusion, that creature, that thing, has spirit. It moves.
All right. Okay, now, second part of that, he says, could non-white people live in the freedom of their spirit to be free of the prison system of white supremacy?
If a person wants to assume that they have met the criteria of what they call freedom. Now, I don't think that people were made to be in a box. like what a prison cell is. So I've heard sometimes, I think going back in the years, I forgot the poet's name, said, "Stone walls do not a prison make, nor iron bars a cage. Because if I have freedom in my soul," or words of that effect, "then I'm free." Well, a person can look at it like that. It depends on what you choose to call freedom. See, that's a loaded word, too. Very important word. What's free to one person may not be free to another person. And so that has to be defined. But a person, in answer to the question, it depends on what the person wants to do. Comes down to a want. Now, if a person just says, "Well, I just want to sit here in this box, and I'm cramped in here, and the box is just big enough for me to turn around in, but I can spend my entire existence because in my mind, I'm free." Now, the people that put me in this box, they might think they're punishing me, but they're not punishing me. I'm eating food, they feed me, and I sit here all day, staring out the window, that small window above my head there, or looking at the wall every day, all day, every night, all night, until I finally fall over dead. But I was free, and I've always been free. But the person in the box next to them may say, "I want out of here. I want out of here. I was not me. I got arms, I got legs, I got all kind of strength, I got a mind. I'm not supposed to be in this box. I'm supposed to be somewhere else doing things, hopefully constructive things. And I can't do it in this box. I am not free." That guy next door to me, he say he's free. He said nothing bothers him. But every moment I spend in here, I'm bothered. I want out. I want to talk to somebody about getting out of here. I want to bust out of here. There's anything I can do, whatever. I can't stand this. I wasn't made for this. My body's not designed for this. This is an error. Depends on what a person wants to call free.
Okay.
I say that no one should be put in a situation where they are not doing what? Solving problems. What problems? All of the world's problems. That is what I wrote my book for. Every person on the planet is designed. You're given fingers, you're given toes, you're given hands, you're given eyes, ears, you're given mobility, legs, feet. You're supposed to be using this equipment, logically speaking. Using it for what? To do constructive things, to straighten out things that need straightening out. 2 words, problem solving.
Okay. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to the 202 area code. That would be, we call it Joshua. Some people call it Yahshua. But anyway, nevertheless, you are on with Mr. Fuller. Good morning, and what is your question?
Good morning, Mr. Bob. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, sir.
I have a brief VZQ and a brief question, if that's still okay.
If it's brief, yes, go ahead.
Yeah. If the system of white supremacy is the most powerful religion in the known universe, then as a victim of racism, white supremacy, I'm working towards making the code our religion. Now, Mr. Fuller, I'm not like some of the other callers. When it comes to racism, white supremacy, among other subjects, I am as retarded as they come sometimes. I listen to the shows often, I bought all 3 books. I read often, but something's not clicking for me. Please explain to me, according to the code, what the black male and his offspring should have done to get the most constructive result possible, assuming that you saw that video where the white woman and the white man hotel manager approached them and basically said he stole my phone and give me my phone back. Later footage released from the hotel by the New York Police Department showed that white woman tackling that black offspring. And apparently an Uber driver brought the white woman's phone back to that hotel.
So,
okay.
What exactly was the question?
What was the most constructive result that black male and or his offspring should have done in that situation?
Talking to his offspring about that situation?
I'm sorry, I was talking as you were talking. Sorry. I didn't hear you.
Well, if I understand the question, talking about the incident, which I did see on television, what should the male person, the black person, talk about when he talks about that incident to his offspring? Is that the question?
No. What should he have done? According to the code, how should he responded? Let's say if he was a person who knew about the code, and then that happened to him, what according to the code was he supposed to do in that moment that we saw on the recording?
Well, it seems like he did the correct thing as far as his choices are concerned. I mean, that was in the realm because that was his choice. And what you look at, if you always try to measure what the correct thing is to do, you look at what was the constructive result. So as it turned out, the result was constructive in his favor, from what I heard, from what I understand later on. I don't remember exactly all the details of exactly what happened, but I think since the judgment was all in his favor, that was the constructive result, because that's what you want. You want the results of any situation that you happen to find yourself in to come out in your favor. That's why black people should be very, very conscious of what they're doing and what they're saying, so that they think ahead. Now, how is this going to work out? Is this going to work out for me or against me? Is it going to work for the system of racism, or is it going to work against the system of racism? Because here again, you don't have anything in between. It's either going to produce something constructive or non-constructive. Everything that you do and say, that's going to be the result.
Okay.
So it seems like, from what I heard and what I understand, it worked out in the favor of the black person who had the verbal altercation, quote unquote, with the white lady.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Joshua. Let's see here. 516-453-9921 is the contact number. Again, 516-453-9921 is the contact number. Or you can also Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com, and I will attempt to read it. Maybe not today, but it will be read, and I will notify you when that is happening. From the chat room, Mr. Fuller, we have this. Mr. Fuller, is getting a divorce constructive when a black male and female have 4 offspring but have grown far apart? For example, the black male is attempting to live a codified life, but the black female has anti-sexual leanings and engages in non-constructive activities, for example, arguments, cursing, yelling, etc. Thank you for answering my question.
Well, here again, it comes down to constructive and non-constructive. If the person who is in that situation has to make a judgment about, if I continue in this situation, is it going to be a constructive situation or a non-constructive situation? If I continue as it is now, if this continues, if I can't change it, if I try the different codified methods for changing it, by what I say and what I do and what the other person says and does, and it seems like this is taking up all of my time and energy, and it's having a non-constructive, it's producing non-constructive results for everybody involved, or for most of the people involved. You have to make that judgment. And if it seems like it weighs in favor of you getting out of that situation and getting into a more constructive situation, then you make your list of things, your options, your compensatory options, that word compensation. Well, doesn't seem like this is working very well in a constructive manner, producing constructive results. So I'm going to make a list of the results that I want that will be constructive, and I'm going to work toward doing everything on that list. Because that's one way, codification is about you codify everything so that you do what? So that you get the most constructive results. So in answer to the question, yes, if it means you have to part with that person, and if you're going to get constructive results from having done so, then you work toward doing that. Because it's always about improving every situation. You don't stay in a situation that where you cannot improve from what it is now to what it ought to be in the future. Always work toward that. Don't stay in a situation that keeps getting worse.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fuller, and thank you, Ms. Neron, for the question. And Mr. Fuller Neron said thank you for that response. All righty, let's break it off for a second here. You are now listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. If you have a question or want to become part of the conversation, just dial this number, 516-453-9921. Let me repeat that, 516-453-9921. You could also Gmail me at the numero number 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY @gmail.com. Now, if you do elect to use that, keep in mind that I will not read that today, most likely, but it will be read at some time, and I will inform you of the date and time when it will be read. Please do not write me a novel, ma'am, or write me a novel, sir. Just make it short and sweet so that I can communicate with Mr. Fuller your request. Could you do that for me? Thank you. Could you do that for the listening audience? Thank you. Because remember that whatever you say, whatever you write down, if I read it, it goes into cyberspace, and it is there forever. So keep that in mind as you are communicating and asking your question. In fact, that even goes for me also. Mr. Fuller can be heard. His December the 28th show that he did on the Carl Nelson Show, for WOL 1450 on your radio dial, but it's also on the ProduceJustice.com website, which I accessed this morning to find that information out. And Mr. Fuller was asked this morning when he was going to be on again. He didn't know, so we have the latest update for that. And also, if you want to hear more of Mr. Fuller, you can. The YouTube video is called Results or Hot Air, one of the two. You get to hear a different side of Mr. Fuller, but speaking the same thing about being codified. I think that you will really enjoy it. A lot of people have asked about that, and that's what it is. YouTube, Mr. Fuller's interview with Dr. Randy Short and Mr. Fuller called Hot Air Results. Okay, let's do this. This comes from Miss Anonymous. She says this, Mr. Fuller. She says, why do black people only shows up to a family member's funeral than a family reunion or a deceased person's birthday? In conjunction with that, why do some black people always showing out or pretend they miss the person so much at the person's funeral? And when they were alive, they either couldn't stand the person or never knew them. So let's go back to the first one. Why do black people only shows up to a family member's funeral than a family reunion or a deceased person's birthday?
Well, the person, according to the code, the person who does that can explain why they do. So if anybody who wants to know why they do, then ask them. Well, what are they doing there? Why did they come? And be ready for whatever answer they get. That's the codified procedure. People should always be able to explain what they're doing, if they're doing something, what they're doing, explain what they're doing and why they're doing it. People should always be able to explain that, even if they decide not to tell you, which that is an explanation. Well, I'm doing it, but I'm not going to tell you why I'm doing it, because I don't think that's any of your business. They may tell you that, so you got your answer, because the person said they're not going to tell you. But you can ask. You can ask that, because the person is there for a reason, and you can just simply ask. And whatever answer the person gives, according to the code, you accept that answer, because that's their answer. So that's the way that works. Whomever is doing whatever they're doing should be able to explain what they're doing and why they're doing it, and what they expect the constructive result to be. The person is there. What does that person expect their presence there, the constructive result, to be? And why is it that they didn't show up in many other events? And a person can ask these questions if you wish to ask these questions. If you think that by asking these questions, it will produce what? A constructive result.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't think that asking these questions are going to produce a constructive result, if it winds up being an argument rather than a conversation, then you ascertain that before you ask the questions, because you don't want anything to lead to an argument.
Yes, sir.
According to the code, black people should never have arguments. They should have conversations.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then, again, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Fuller. I'm sorry.
Yes, that's it.
Okay. Then she said, why do some black people always showing out or pretend they missed the person so much at a person's funeral, and when they were alive, they either couldn't stand the person or never knew them? Why is that, she's asking?
You can ask the same questions of the person who is doing that. Why are you here? I thought you didn't like the person, so why did you come to the funeral? And they might tell you, I came to the funeral because I wanted to see them dead, and they're dead, and I wanted to see them dead. That might be the answer. So they can say that. You don't know what they're going to say until they give their answer. Or they might simply say, none of your business. That's an answer. So, unless you have another question, leave it alone. Because the code says, bottom line is, Every conversation is supposed to produce a constructive result. Otherwise, it is not, according to the code, a conversation. What's the difference between a conversation and an argument? An argument is designed to win arguments. A conversation is codified and specifically designed to produce constructive results. So if you anticipate or you believe in advance that the question you're going to ask in the manner in which you ask it is going to lead to an argument, then don't ask that question unless you're ready to lead that argument into a conversation which will produce what? A constructive result. Everything that a black person says, or any person for that matter, to anybody, should always have in mind before you say it, what I'm going to say, is it going to produce a constructive result or a non-constructive result? And if you perceive that it might produce, most likely, a non-constructive result, then don't say it.
Okay. Okay, let's do this one. This comes from Black Rant. I believe this is VGQ, but he says this: white people don't want a system of justice. Some of them claim they do, but in reality, they are in love with their own white privilege so much that they cannot envision a world without it. They don't feel they can compete on a level playing field with other races, so they give themselves all kinds of advantages over black people and other people of color. Why would they give up white privilege and white supremacy if they feel, correctly or not, that they are benefiting from it? That seems like trying to wrestle a piece of raw meat from a hungry wolf. That wolf would rather die than give up that piece of meat. Thank you for your work, Mr. Fuller. Just had to get that rant out. That came from Black Rant. Speaking of that, let's do this. Let's go way over to London, England. Get ready for Trey. Trey, you are now on with Mr. Fuller. Good morning.
Blessed Risings, Bobby and Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. And I live in London right now, but I'm originally from Los Angeles, South Central Los Angeles, to be more precise. My question to Neely Fuller is, because I'm in Europe and I've been all over the world and I experience mistreatment. I want to say whenever I leave my place of dwelling. So is it safe to assume that until the system of racism and white supremacy is replaced with justice, I can expect this mistreatment every single day, along with most people who've been classified as black?
So the question is, what?
The question is, can myself and other non-white people expect mistreatment every single day until the system of white supremacy is replaced with a system of justice?
If I understand the question, can you expect the system of white supremacy to be mistreating you every single day? Is that the question?
Yes.
The answer to that is yes. That's what white supremacy does. The system of white supremacy is specifically designed to dominate and mistreat people of color. That's what it's for. Domination and mistreatment. In order to achieve what? In order to achieve the things that all creatures want, all people. And that is three things: fun, glory, and material comfort. Squirrels want it, ducks want it, people want it. The people who thought up the concept and the practice of white supremacy came up with a formula for doing so. We're going to get those three things by dominating and mistreating people who have color in their skin. And we're going to call it racism and or white supremacy. So they did that in 9 areas of activity, so that they would cover everything: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. We're going to dominate and mistreat people of color, people who have color in their skin, everywhere on the planet, and we're going to get out of it fun, glory, and material comfort. Now, what do you mean by fun? Well, anything that pleases you. Now, squirrels like to be pleased. They just chase around in the forest and whatnot and play little games and whatnot when they're not eating, and eating is fun. People and squirrels enjoy eating, and they look around for something to do that they call recreation or entertainment. So that's fun. Glory is being well thought of by something or somebody. I mean, creatures. People go and buy dogs, pay great amounts of money for a dog or a cat, because the dog or cat may give them a little bit of glory that they can't get out of people. People say that, hey, I can always rely on my dog. I mean, to follow me around and just love being with me. That's why I have my dog. That's why I feed my dog. That's why I look forward to seeing my dog, and my dog looks forward to seeing me. Why? I get glory out of that. I get appreciated, because people don't appreciate me like my dog does. That's just one illustration. And then you get the third thing, material comfort. When it's cold outside, you want to be warm. If, you're shivering and you're freezing, you want warmth. So you want some type of material comfort. You'd rather sit in a chair that's got 4 legs than sit in a chair that's got 3 legs, and you keep trying to balance yourself on a 3-legged chair. And the mathematics of it says you're not going to be very comfortable. So you want a 4-leg chair, and presumably one that you can kind of relax in, you might say, or drift off to sleep without falling off out of the chair. That's material comfort. See, those 3 things. So that's what the white supremacists get out of it. The same thing that every creature on this planet called Earth wants. Every scorpion wants that. So, by the evidence. So they figured out a way to get it, but it's a gangster way of getting it. And it turned out to be the most powerful idea for dominating and mistreating people and getting fun, glory, and material comfort ever thought up in recorded history. There's nothing that compares with the system of white supremacy for doing that. It's been the most successful operation for pulling that off. But it's a gangster concept and a gangster operation. Thug. That's what it is.
Okay.
Killing
Thuggery.
people. Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you, Trey, from London. And do not be a stranger. Okay, Mr. Fuller, it's big time now. It's time for you to speak about your publication. So take it away.
You can get the material that I'm talking about and what the problem is as I see it. And I hope that people see it the way that I see it. That's why I wrote it. That the whole world is being dominated by a world government in capital letters called the system of white supremacy, and or racism, and that all areas of activity that governs the conduct of the non-white people on the planet come under that system. And that system should be replaced with a better system, with a system where you don't mistreat people, because it's based on dominating and mistreating people. So you can have the same results, fun, glory, and material comfort, in another type system that would be better and wouldn't include the mistreatment of people, wouldn't be including dominating and mistreating people. It would be a system of justice, which means guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. So I've written a couple of volumes that's supposed to help the individual person work to achieve that goal, so that you have a system of justice throughout the planet rather than a system of racism dominating everybody's behavior. And that would be guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help, and have a code for achieving that, because the white supremacists have a code for maintaining the system of white supremacy. The only thing that will work against a code, because a code is very efficient, is a code that's a counter code to that efficient code. And you come up with a better code with a more efficient and just and correct objective. And the book is supposed to help the individual non-white person to achieve that by their everyday behavior and enticing other people to follow the code, not follow them, but follow the code. You can get the books by going to producejustice.com. Producejustice.com. And it's basically about problem solving, minute by minute, because people are faced with problems minute by minute.
All righty. ProduceJustice.com. All the books, by the way, are available. I saw that on the ProduceJustice.com website. As a matter of fact, all the information that you would need or want to need concerning the book and anything else is on that website. That is true, including upcoming shows that, or past shows rather, that have been, Mr. Fuller has been interviewed. One is the Carl Nelson show. That is definitely up there. In fact, the 28th of December show that Mr. Carl Nelson interviewed Mr. Fuller, which I plan on doing that. And also you can go to the YouTube channel and get Mr. Fuller's Hot Air results, a very popular one. And you get to hear Mr. Neely Fuller speak about that and concerning the code also. Okay, let's do this. My name is Wesley. I'm currently living in the United Kingdom. I have come to understand that the category for highly melanated people, which is called black people, is mostly a political term and has black people and has little to do with the complexion of a person's skin. For example, Barack Obama is categorized as a black, but a dark-skinned person from Southern Asia is not. The term black has been constructed to correlate to negativity and to be undesired phrases like black lie, black market, black magic, Black Friday, all associated to a form of degradation and dysfunction. I understand the white supremacists constructed these phrases to cause further confusion, but my question, Mr. Neely Fuller, is, do you think it is constructive for non-white people who fit the white supremacist criteria to be classified as black people to continue to facilitate the use of this term? Thank you for taking my question, and I'm still learning.
Yes, because we can use the term. It says in the textbook itself, the seeds of the destruction of the system of white supremacy or built into the system itself. So you can take words that the white supremacists use. That's why there's a word guide there at producejustice.com that you can get that says how you use the words. Words are nothing but tools. So according to the code, there are three categories of people when you start talking about race or racism. White people, non-white people, and white supremacists. But you have to have be a person classified as white in order to qualify to be a white supremacist. So you have very light-skinned black people. Some have, visually speaking, skins that are white. But you call them black. I mean, because they function as black people. Or someone said that one drop of blood, as they call it, one drop of black blood will make you black if you, by visual looking at the person looks white, like the albinos. The skin of many albinos is whiter, if you want to say by shades of white, if there is such a thing as shades of white. According to the codes, no such thing as a shade of white. You're either white or you're not. But there are many people who are called albinos who many people say, visually speaking, are whiter than white people. But at the same time, they're black. They're non-white because they are albinos and they have what they call negroid or features, whatever that means, facial features, or they have hair that is kinky and not straight, and they say, well, that makes them non-white. So huge numbers of people fit that category. And like the caller said, President Obama was considered to be black. Well, Malcolm X is considered to be black. Elijah Muhammad considered to be black for sure. And Adam Clayton Powell, it just goes on and on and on. Billie Holiday, black. Even though you look at the people and you say, they're not black. I mean, you can call them something else, but they're not black. Oh, yes, they're black. Why? Because in the system of white supremacy, the white supremacists decide who's black and who's not. And so all we have to do is just seize the language. And like the caller said, if you choose to seize the language that produces a constructive effect, constructive result, which is what you're supposed to do, then go ahead and do that. And if you be the pioneer, just say that President Obama is not black. But then you, under the law of compensation, you have to say what he is. Now, what I've written is, like I said at the beginning of this answer, 3 categories. It's best not to deviate from it. That's what I've found from experience. White, non-white, and white supremacists. Now, if you look it up in the northwestern hemisphere, what the census says, the last one I looked at, which is about maybe goes back to 20 years. I don't know what it says now, but there are 21 categories. I say this census is not accurate. It doesn't tell the truth. If you're talking about counter-racist science, you're talking about 3 categories, not 21. They even have a category of racial identity called Pacific Islander. You even have a category called Other. Now, if you were walking down the street and someone said, well, what was the race of this person, would you say? Visually speaking, you say, well, some other race. That's the phrase, some other race. Say, yeah, but how would you describe the person? I describe the person as being some other race. What would you be looking at? I mean, what would you go by? Some other race as a category? Some other race other than what? Other than whatever else you got. I mean, it makes no sense. In fact, many people wrote articles about the census saying that some other race category, Pacific Islander. Pacific Islander, who is that? Actor Marlon Brando spent a lot of time on a specific island. Is that a race? Does that make him a Pacific Islander race member? The code says white, non-white, and white supremacists. These are the counter-racist terms. They work best if you're talking about countering racism, eliminating the confusion.
All right. There you have it. Okay, we're coming up on the hour. Alexis and Marilyn, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to get you on the other side of the hour while we still have a few minutes. Mr. Fuller, no, not yet. Okay, thank you. What I want to do is, in the remaining few moments, let me do this. It says, this is from John. He said, unified by logic. And I need you to answer this quickly. He says, I agree with you, Mr. Fuller. Your assessment of black culture is a failure. Black culture promotes criminal behavior, poor family values, and ignorance over truth and intelligence. Under VGQ, Mr. Fuller, are non-white people wrong for finding a mate or lover that is white? As prisoners of war, does it make sense to find someone who can help alleviate the pain of being black? You got a couple of minutes on this one, Mr. Fuller.
Oh, they can alleviate the pain, but it'll be the same as alleviating the pain like using drugs. See, people people say that what I've heard, when you get high on cocaine or heroin, you are relieving pain, mental pain, some type of pain. Otherwise, people wouldn't use it. People don't go around as a whole looking for pain, but are you really getting rid of the pain or are you hiding it? That's the question. So in answer to this question, according to the code, if a person engages in sexual intercourse who is black and are non-white with a white person in the system of white supremacy, it's the same as the cocaine or the heroin in broad answer to the question. If you make that analogy, it has the same effect. It just makes you weaker under the illusion of easing the pain, because the pain is still there. Why? Because the system of white supremacy is still there. In fact, the white partner becomes even stronger as a white supremacist in that so-called relationship, because it's not an equal relationship.
Mm-hmm. All righty. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you for quickly answering. Also, listen, we've come to the conclusion of the first hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. We'd like to thank you for your calls. Thank you for your Gmails. Thank you for your chat room. Thank you for listening. We'd also like to thank Mr. Fuller and the Gateway Brothers who keep us straight and going, and the music and everything. Thank you. If you have to go, then we'll hopefully see you next week. If you're going to stay on, like Alexis is, stay right there. We'll be back right after a 5-second break here on the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. All righty. Good morning, and welcome to the second hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. It is 10 a.m. in the eastern section of the concept called the United States. All caps, by the way. Hint, hint. And if you'd like to get in contact with this show, which is not a hint, call this number. 516-453-9921. Make sure if you have a question or a comment, VGQ, press the number 1 button as Alexis has done, and you will go to, you'll get in line. Also do this, if you'd like to Gmail me, you can. Ma'am, sir, don't write me a novel, just quickly, or short and sweet. The numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. Now, I cannot promise that it will be read today, but it will be read, and I will give you the date and time that your Gmail will be read, as I have done throughout this program. You didn't know that, but some of those questions came from people who had asked, and then I answered it and gave them the date and the time that it was done. So make sure you do that, ma'am. Make sure you do that, sir, and we will get you on. Now, the lady or the person in the 412, don't forget to give the call screener your name. We'll get to you, JD, in the 212, but right now we're going to go to the 240. Let me see if I can get you up there. I think it's Alexis. Wait a minute. Alexis, there we go. You're on. Good morning and welcome to the program. What's your question for Mr. Fuller?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby and Mr. Fuller.
Good.
My question is, the white people have seemed to take up everything. What hasn't been taken up that black people can kind of put their hands in and be more logical to say? And I have another question. My second question is,
wait a minute. Let Mr. Fuller. Wait a minute. Hold it, darling.
Okay.
Let Mr. Fuller answer your first question, and then we can go to the second one if it's quick. Okay. Go ahead now.
I didn't get the first question. What is that first question?
What's the first question, dear?
Is there any space that white supremacy hasn't covered that black people can grab onto?
No. The white supremacists are very thorough. They're the most thorough people in the known universe in recorded history. That's why the system of white supremacy is the most powerful system of government ever thought up in the minds of the people on planet Earth in recorded history, to the best of my knowledge. I don't know of any system that's more powerful, more efficient. And so they thought of every detail. They covered everything in every area of activity. They say that we are going to govern and dictate what happens in all of the areas of activity that involve the non-white people of this planet, directly or indirectly in their interactions with white people. We're going to set up a system where we dominate and mistreat them if necessary. Of course, it's all mistreatment because we're going to dominate them based on their color, which means we will make all the decisions about what they can do and what they don't do in economics, in education, in entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. People classified as white will have the first and last word in what non-white people can and cannot do, will and will not do in all of these 9 areas of activity 24/7. And so they set up a system that they call, in capital letters, the system of white supremacy / racism as a means of doing that. And it's the most powerful government that the world has ever seen, the most efficient. No so-called government that ever came before was more efficient in dominating people and in mistreating people and in providing many material things. The system of white supremacy has produced more when it comes to things than any other system before it. It's very efficient. So some people have even said, mostly a lot of white people have said, well, we came up with a system that's superior to every other system that's ever been, in recorded history, and it's called racism, white supremacy, and it's very efficient in producing a lot of wonderful things that a lot of you black people worship and enjoy. So why get rid of it? Why get rid of something that really works and produces? Well, the answer is it's a non-just system. You have built-in mistreatment of people. You throw away people deliberately and laugh about it. That is not a system that should take precedence, even though it produces a lot of material comforts, because it's making people discomfortable by killing them in large numbers, mistreating them all of the time in order to come up with things that mostly satisfy one category of people, and that category is white people. So that's why it's so difficult for white people to want to turn loose to it. Why turn loose to something that works for you when nothing else has worked for you like it has? I can understand the white point of view. When black people say, well, let's have justice. And so the white person will ask, logically so, well, what do you mean by justice? They say, well, guarantee that no one is mistreated and guarantee that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. And then the white person will say, yeah, but if we set that up, it means I won't have any privileges. You know, I'll have to give up a lot of things that I have and I've gotten used to and whatnot. But that's exactly what black people are doing when they ask for justice. They're asking for white people to give up what they have become very comfortable with. Mm-hmm. And that's a hard sell. We need to really think about that.
Yes, sir. Okay, what's your second question quickly? And there's noise in the background, so answer your question and I'll have Mr. Fuller do that. Ask your question.
Okay, is there any advantages of being more emotional than logical? Because black people are more emotional. So is there any advantages to that we can use?
There's never an advantage in detaching, in other words, separating emotion from logic. Emotions are supposed to lead to logic. Emotions do serve a purpose, because an emotion is what? It's like an engine in a car. But the logic is the steering wheel. So just having a powerful engine in a car, emotions are very powerful, because that's what motivates the car. You can't run that car without some type of engine. But the engine needs a steering wheel. That's why that steering wheel is attached to what? The engine. You got all that power, but you want to use that power in a logical manner, so you can turn right, you can turn left, you can go straight ahead, you can back up, because they have a lever in there or something that's attached to the engine where you can back up. You can use that power from the engine to back straight up or back up at an angle, so you can park. So that's the analogy that I make to say that logic, or rather emotions, should be attached to logic. Otherwise, you got a car going down a highway with no steering mechanism, and you know what's going to happen when that happens.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Or when the person who is operating the steering mechanism is inebriated, which happens all the time, usually on holy days, quote, unquote, of all things. Mm-hmm. And the carnage is taken for granted. You know, well, you got a 40-car wreck out there, well, ho-hum, that's routine. 60, 80 cars all piled up along the highway, 30 people dead, everybody injured. And we take that for granted, that that's normal. Well, it's a holiday. What do you expect? A holy day? That's a day that's ruined. That's a day in which lots of non-constructive things happen, which is never supposed to happen. But, in answer to the question, logic must be attached to emotions. Otherwise, the emotions run wild. People's emotions change every 5 minutes. They're completely unreliable. But if they're attached to logic, it works. Mm-hmm. The white supremacists understand that.
Okay.
They see to it that black people don't do any thinking. See, thinking means you're using logic. You don't want a black person to think. You want a black person to just jump up and down and spin around, stand on their head, just be what they call animated, meaning like an animal. But even animals have some type of logic.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Alexis. Do not be a stranger. Let's go to Manhattan, because he's been on hold for a minute. J.D. from Manhattan, you are now on with Mr. Fuller. What is your, you have a statement. Okay, go ahead, J.D.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Bobby. Firstly, I want to thank Mr. Fuller and yourself, Mr. Fuller, for providing the information, and you, Mr. Bobby, for having the courage to promote it and put it out there. I've bought the books, and I'm reading the books, and I love that you have simplified a lot of the condition that we're going through. I'd like to say, firstly, from Scripture, God says he will not change the condition of a people until they change themselves, which means we have to do our part. I'd like to just touch on the logic thing for a quick moment. In the concept of racism, white supremacy, we have been, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing added in some of her lectures to your 9, she added health. And I think with what we're facing today, we have to remember the source of the information that we're getting about what we're facing right now. And we are not using our own minds to do the research on any of this stuff because fear has superseded logic. And I believe the information is out there. You're not going to see it on mainstream TV, just like we would never see or hear about you on mainstream TV, because their job is to continue to promote the narrative. And I just kind of feel that we cannot afford to forget who it is we're dealing with. And somebody said, if you don't think for yourself, then others will think for you, and they will not be thinking about you. So I encourage us all to just seek the knowledge. It's out there. I've gotten so much knowledge on YouTube, not just about the virus, how it works, about treatments that there are for it, but we've allowed the fear to just engulf our minds and our spirits, and we're forgetting that the source of information that we're looking at with this fear has never been truthful to us. So I just want to say I want to thank you, Mr. Foley, and I've co-opted your statement when people say, how you doing? I say I'm still learning. And I love you guys. I love your show, and God bless you.
Okay. Thank you, J.D. Don't be a stranger. J.D. from Manhattan. Let's go to the Steel City, I believe that is. Jimbo from Pittsburgh in the 412. You're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
How you doing, Mr. Fuller? Jim from Pittsburgh.
Still learning.
Well, thank you, sir. Me too. I have a question. I've been reading the book, but I've been having immediate issues trying to implement some things, mainly with constructive or so-called constructive black people. Whenever we try to come together and try to do something, building anything, say like building a house or anything, it seems that we always start arguing and fighting. In fact, I've never been in a situation where I've been with black people where the arguing and the bickering hasn't started, even when we have a goal and we're trying to do something constructive. So what can we do to stop this or minimize this from happening?
Here's the 4 wants. That's the first thing you go to when you're interacting with anybody. Everybody wants something every minute of every day. Everything. Every creature wants something. A bird wants to fly from the limb to the top of a building off in the distance. Why do you say that the bird wants to do that? Because that's what you saw the bird do. You watched that bird and was then on that tree limb, and then for no apparent reason to you, the bird took off, flew 4 blocks, and went to the top of a building and just sat there looking from side to side like birds do. You see them do it all the time. So you ask yourself, why did that bird go from the tree to the top of a building, and that particular building 4 blocks away? And then sat there and just looked from side to side for 15 minutes and then took off and flew south. Where? I don't know. So what it comes down to, what this illustration is about, first of all, you set what it is you want to do. Now, the bird did what it wanted to do. You may not understand it, but the bird understood clearly what it wanted to do and did it. That's why it did what it did. So you have 4 questions that you ask people on any project when you are so-called working together, which is very difficult for black people to do because we're trained not to, okay, by the white supremacists. But we can do it if we have codification. What is it you want to do? That's what you ask the person. That's number 1. Number 2, why do you want to do this thing that you want to do? And then number 3, just as important, how do you plan? Because before you make a move, you better have a plan. Nobody should move before there's a plan. Got to be a plan. That's something the white supremacists understand clearly. They don't make a move without a plan, a code. So how do you plan to do this thing that you want to do? After answering the first question and the second question, what do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? Third question, how do you plan to do this thing that you want to do? And then the fourth question, which is super important. They're all important, but this is the bottom line question, the last one. What do you expect the constructive result to be? But getting back to what you said about your particular circumstance, that third question was very important. You didn't have a plan, evidently. Somebody didn't have a plan. So everybody, when you come together, you come with your plan. You already know what you want to do, why you want to do it. Now you got to come up with a plan. If you don't have a plan, you don't move to that fourth. It's not going to be a constructive result because you didn't have a plan. So you have to have the plan. That's why the code says codify everything. And when I say a plan, I mean every detail. You don't do any head scratching as you go along. That doesn't work for black people at all. When you're trying to fumble and stumble your way into what it is you want to do, you're going to get the arguments. They're going to break out immediately, and they're going to keep going. But you must have the plan that everybody agrees on, because what does a plan do, a code do? What is a code? Like a fire code, like a plumbing code, electrical code. What is it you know? What makes it a code a code? Like the white supremacists have a code, the code of white supremacy. That's why it works. And that's the nature of a code. When you do it, you know it's going to work before you do it. That's what a codified plan is like. Not just something that's thrown together. Well, we're going to try this, and as we go along, we're going to try that. And Jim, if you can come up with $2,000, I mean, then we'll work it. But if, because it will require $2,000 from you, But if you don't get it, we'll just try to figure out something as we go along. It doesn't work for black people. If Jim says he's going to have contribute $2,000 to this plan, you got to have that $2,000. Otherwise, nothing moves, because that's a part of the plan. See, the plan's got to be absolute. You can't stumble and fumble your way, which is how black people usually try to do everything.
Okay. All righty. Thank you, Jim from Pittsburgh, and do not be a stranger. Thank you, sir. Okay, Mr. Fuller, for those who would like to call in, you can, 516-453-9921. Be sure to depress the number 1 button. You will get in line for your question or comments to be heard. Please, ma'am, please, sir, please be clear so that Mr. Fuller and myself and the callers can hear your question. Please do that. If you'd like, you can also Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com, and I will get it, and it will be read at it won't be read today, but it will be read at a place and time during one of our broadcasts, and I will inform you when it will be read. Please, ma'am, please, sir, don't write me a novel, and please be specific and make it clear so that it can be read. Please do that. Okay. Let's see here, Mr. Fuller. She's been here for a while. This comes from Samantha. She says this: Mr. Fuller, what are your thoughts with regards to world-renowned museums discussing if they should repatriate looted artifacts to their origin of countries? And what is the purpose of the white supremacists stealing the artifacts from indigenous people and then displaying them in their museums? Thank you, Mr. Fuller. I look forward to your response. Samantha.
Yeah. According to the code, you always ask the people who are doing something, ask the people who are doing whatever they're doing, why they are doing it. They wanted to do it. It goes back to those 4 wants. It always goes to the 4 wants. That was one of the last things that was put in the textbook in the 2016 edition. And I told Dr. Frances Cress Wilson about that. And she said, I'm going to use that one because she said she could see the validity of it. The white supremacists, if they go and take artifacts from here and artifacts from there, whatever those artifacts are, and then take them to a certain place, it's something they wanted to do. So you can just simply go to the people who did it, they did it, and say, sir, I'd like to ask you a few questions. You say you're a curator or whatever it is, or whatever the title is of the person who collects artifacts, and say, now you brought those things from where they were to a place where you thought they ought to be. Now, was that something you wanted to do? So you go to number 1 of the 4 wants. And the person says, yes, that's why I did it. I wanted to do it. So, okay, why? Go to the second question. Why did you want to do that? Move them from where they were to where they are now. And don't interfere with the answer. That's another part of the code. People have a tendency to do that. I'll do that sometimes. I have to watch myself very carefully. We have a tendency to jump into the answer. No, don't. When you ask a question, put a question mark behind that question. Don't interfere with the answer, and don't move to the second question until the first question is answered. That's another thing that people have a tendency to do. They say, well, I got a second question, along with this first question. And so, or a third question. No. One question at a time, one answer at a time. That's how you get what? Clarity. Where you want clarity for and focus for, you eliminate confusion, which is the one thing that is deadly in any conversation. Confusion is the death knell of every conversation, because now you're going to get into an argument, or you're going to get into a whole bunch of more confusion, which is nothing but an argument, mildly or otherwise. So that, but go back to those 4 wants. It'll fit anywhere on any planet, anywhere. It applies to every situation. Those 4 wants. If you have creatures in those situations, any kind of creatures, anything that moves, it wants something. That's why it's moving. It wants to move. So creatures move. That's why they call them creatures. Things that move on their own through the spirit that's in them. Okay? People move. Insects move. Unless they're dead. That's when the spirit is gone out of it and it just becomes another object. Okay. But those 4 questions, that's all you have to do. Why did you move these artifacts from Botswana to London and put them in a place called a museum? That's the second question. Why did you do it? And wait on the answer. And then be ready with the third question, which is, what is that third question? What did you want to do? Why did you want to do it? Right. How did you plan to do it? So they planned to do it because they have already done it. Okay? So they did it according to a plan, because you see the artifacts in London now, and they're not in Botswana. And then the fourth question, what do you expect the constructive result to be, sir or ma'am, by moving these artifacts from where they were in Botswana to this museum in London? What do you expect the constructive result to be? And have your pen and paper ready, or your recorder of any kind, to get that answer. That's the bottom line answer. You know, you did it. You had a reason for doing it. You had a plan for doing it. And so they are here. So what do you expect the constructive result to be? They're not in Botswana. They're here in London. What's the constructive result? And wait on the answer, and don't jump into the answer. Don't trying to tell them why you think they did it. Let them tell you.
All righty. Let's do this. Let me do this first. We're going to the bottom of the hour. You are now listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. To get in contact with the show, just simply call 516-453-9921, or you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. We will do that. Don't write me a novel when you do that. Just a quick little sentence or phrase or VGQ. And if I get time at some point in time, I will read it and give you the date and time when I will do that. Otherwise, we're going to continue on with the show. Oh, by the way, Mr. Fuller can be heard the December the 28th show, Carl Nelson show interview. Mr. Fuller was on that. If you'd like to tune that up, you can. It is on the Produce Justice website. I checked that out this morning. Also, you can YouTube Mr. Fuller's response to he and Dr. Randy Short called Hot Air or Results. That's on YouTube. It'll give you another perspective of listening to Mr. Fuller, along with other messages that are all over that platform that you can hear Mr. Fuller. Okay, with that in mind, let me do this before I go to the phone calls. Let's do this. This comes from Neuron, a final VGQ. He says, if possible, Mr. Fuller, thank you for your life's work, and I know it's late. I'm late, but happy Breath Day. I'm a little fond of that because that's what I say to people now, happy Breath Day. But anyway, it says happy Breath Day to you. Because of my current employment, I'm very cautious about calling in and having someone recognize my voice, though I did call once last year. Mr. Fuller has enabled me to continue to seek constructive engagement while attempting to live the compensatory code in as, quote, safe, end of quote, a manner as possible. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you very much, and God bless to you and Mr. Bobby. All righty. Thank you there, Neuron. Let's do this here. Let me see who's been holding the least. Right. Here you go. Let's go to Alex in the 7-1. Whoops. We'll get you in here. Alex in the 713. Okay, we'll get you in here. Okay, Alex, you're on with Alex. Yeah, you're on from Houston. Go ahead, please.
Hello. My question
go
is, in your opinion, what would be the best way to help someone reverse their destructive behavior?
The question is what?
In your opinion, what would be the best way to help someone reverse their destructive behavior?
Who engages in non-constructive behavior?
What would be the best one to help someone reverse their destructive behavior to constructive behavior?
I think I don't understand the question. That's my
fault.
Repeat?
Okay, could you repeat the question, dear?
What would be the best one to help someone reverse their destructive behavior to constructive behavior?
Oh, consult the code book. That's what I wrote it for. The textbook for victims of white supremacy. That's what I would recommend that a person get. A non-white person, anywhere on the planet. Get the book, look through it, and you should be on the way to doing and having a behavior that is more problem-solving than the behavior that you probably have now. That's why I wrote it. It's called the compensatory code. It makes up for what's missing. Non-white people, black people, victims of white supremacy, have many problems. And these problems are aggravated by what the white supremacists demand of non-white people, and that's non-constructive behavior. So it helps us as victims to change our behavior to constructive behavior, even in the system of white supremacy, and how to go about doing it as individual persons in everything that we do each and every day in all areas of activity, wherever we happen to be. That's what the book is designed to do. So in answer to the question, get the textbook, the compensatory code for victims of white supremacy, and you start on your way.
All righty.
Hello?
Yeah, you still there, Mr. Fuller? Okay. Did you get that?
Yeah, that's my recommendation.
Yes,
that's why I wrote the book.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just to sell a book, but it's the only vehicle that I know, other than this program and programs similar to this, that I can use. You know, we're trying to change from one thing to another. It's something we want to do. Getting back to that once again. Change our behavior from what it is now to what it ought to be. Well, you need a code for doing that. You need a procedure for doing that. You need a plan for doing that. How do you plan to do it? Have a code. That's how I plan to do it. That's how I started out. I wrote the book for myself to start with, and then people started asking me, how did you do this? At that meeting the other day, how did you know to say this? How did you know to say that? I say, I had a code for doing it. They say, code? What code? I say, one that I came up with because I needed one. I figured I needed one because I was messing up big time, trying to do things at the last minute. I wanted to know what to do way ahead of time, so I didn't have to do all that high-powered thinking, because I'm dealing with people who do high-powered thinking. So I have to think well in advance. And that's how I came up with the concept of a code, and I got other people interested in it. And then I say, that's what we need. We need a code that before you go to the meeting. You already know how the meeting is going to end because you already know exactly what you're going to say, what you're not going to say, how you're going to ask questions, what questions to ask, what questions to be ready to answer, and how to answer those questions. Hey, if you already have that in advance, that really gives you something to work with, rather than go there with a blank mind and a blank sheet of paper and a pencil and say, I hope all of this works out. But if you have a code, because if you're dealing with the white supremacists, you better believe they come there with one.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. By the way, chat room is available, so you can go there and look at all the things that people are saying. Good morning, Vorp. Purple Pill is in there. Let's go to the phone lines. 786, be clear. We're going to Imani. Imani, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please. You're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please. Yes.
Greetings. Greetings, Mr. Fuller.
Yes, sir.
I have my question. My question is this: in terms of non-white people being realistic under the system of racist white supremacy. Hypothetical question, hypothetical statement anyway. If white people decided to leave the planet, how would you itemize on the proficiency of non-white people's behavior as far as manning all of the instruments that are needed to progress from day to day on the earth?
We'd have to figure out how they did it, what they did. All of the machinery, trains would stop, airplanes would be sitting there on the ground getting rusty, like they do in all places now, where the white supremacists go and they start building a railroad like they have among people of color, and on account of some dispute, the white people decide, well, I'm not working with you no more. You people, you don't want to behave. You don't want to do things the way I want it done. You find reasons to argue with me about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And so I'm just out of here. I'm just going to leave this train sitting on the track right where it is. I started to build you a railroad, but I don't like the negotiations that you keep saying I got to make because it seems like it might be constructive for you and not do a whole lot for me and eventually be damaging to you. I mean, and that's your attitude. So I want to tell all you dark-skinned people, I'm out of here. I'm gone. And they do this all over the planet right now. They'll start projects and then quit. They'll start building a dam. And the black people all standing around saying, oh, this is going to be wonderful. Isn't this nice? I mean, we've never had anything like this before. I mean, these people really brought something here that, I mean, we didn't even know existed. And then right in the middle of it, the white supremacists change their minds and just walk off. And so the black people walk down there and say, well, they're all gone. We went there today, and all the white people have disappeared. And all the machines have stopped running. Some of them are still running. I mean, because they left them running. But how are we going to keep them running? And what do they do? And how do they do it? So in answer to the question, we'd have to figure from scratch how all of that works. You're talking about the moment of truth. Or what's going to happen? Sir. What happens when that happens right now? Everything just sits there and rusts. And we rust with it.
What leads me to one more brief question.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Out of the 9 areas of activity, all of them are important, yes. But do you think that education should be the leading area of activity that we should focus on, have the most focus on, out of all of the 9 areas of activity?
Yes, because education is connected with all other areas of activity. So we should be educated. Educated in what? Education not in abstract as the second area of activity, but education about all the other areas of activity. How does economics work? The use of time and energy, not just money, because that's basic economics according to the code. Use of time and energy. How do we entertain ourselves? Right now, black entertainment is a bunch of trash, literally. Why? Because it doesn't have a constructive effect. Overall, what we call black entertainment comes under that category of tacky or trashy. Tacky at its very best. Why? Because it doesn't produce constructive results. Constructive results like what? Like our behavior. All of our entertainment should make us a constructive people. We're not a constructive people at all. Even as we so-called entertain ourselves, even at our parties, we have to do something that is non-constructive. We're trained that way. Trained by whom? The white supremacists. So all of these areas of activity are about education, religion, labor, law, politics. What is education? Knowing what you need to know when you need to know it. Problem solving. If you're not a problem solver, you're not educated. And that covers just about all of us, even those who consider ourselves well educated. We met the criteria of what the white supremacists wanted. We even brag about it. Look at my certificates. Well, who gave them to you? Who gave them to you? For what purposes that they have given them to you? That's what you should think about. But in answer to your question, it's all education. That's why I say I'm still learning. There's no such thing as being an educated person, period. Why? Because there's no such thing as a person who has solved all problems. You're not educated until you are a problem solver. You can solve any problem that's handed to you. It's a piece of cake. No way can you be an educated person unless you're a problem solver. I mean, when people see you coming, they say, here comes the problem solver. Any problem you hand them, they can solve it. That's an educated person.
All righty. All right, Imani, don't be a stranger. Thank you for calling. Okay, I got 16 minutes to do three things, and one of them is a definite must. So I'm gonna clue you in, ask your question, and wait for the answer. Be brief. Okay, my brother out in L.A., Swa, gotcha. You're on.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Ms. Neely Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
My question for you, Ms. Neely Fuller. I have someone in my victim unit who is going to be talking to a judge and a maid. And can you give some constructive advice how to go about talking to a judge in the system of racism?
Well, my experience with observing judges is that judges don't do anything except sit there and make bottom line judgments. But if you interchange with them, they usually do what? They ask questions. And so you are at a disadvantage talking to a judge because judges ask the questions and you have to provide the answers. That's what I have observed. And the judges, the person who asks the questions always has the advantage. That's just the way that works. So you are going to have to keep that in mind, be able to answer questions in a codified manner. And most of the questions that you will answer, unless you really know what you're doing, your answers will be, Your Honor, I don't know. Those three words. You'll be saying that a whole lot. Why would you be saying that? Because chances are you may not know, and you don't want to guess. You start guessing in front of a judge, you're in trouble. If you start saying, I guess, you just simply say, I don't know, Your Honor. I don't know. And Your Honor might say, well, why don't you know? Say, well, I don't know why I don't know. If I knew why I didn't know, I would probably know, Your Honor.
Can I give
you have to have your codified answers ready. That's what I'm saying. Prepare all of your possible answers, because chances are you're not going to be asking the judge questions. The judge is going to be asking you questions. And remember, the code says the person who asks the questions has the advantage. The person who has to answer the questions has the disadvantage. It's harder to answer questions than it is to ask them.
Thank you, Swad. Don't be a stranger, and thank you for your support. I know you've been in the chat room, too, but thank you so much, my brother. I'm gonna keep you on so you can still listen to the program. Okay, speaking about the chat room, you can get in the chat room, and I will say this. It's been very, very interesting, some of the chats in there. That's all I'm going to say about that. Let me get this in here. No, I'm going to do this first. Mr. Fuller, let me get this in. It's time for you to speak about your code book. So go ahead and speak about your code book, and then we'll get the text. Go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
Yes. Well, we've been covering quite a lot of subjects, so that's why I wrote the book. The book helps a person to understand how to think, speak, and act in a codified manner that counteracts the code of the white supremacists. That's why I wrote the book. The dominant feature in a person of color's existence is the system of white supremacy. The system of white supremacy functions very well because a white person who practices white supremacy does so according to a code. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. The white supremacists do things that work. And people all over the world of color marvel at the things that they do. And the things that they do are very efficient because they do things that work. And how do you know when you're doing something that works? By trial and error. And once you keep eliminating the errors in all of your trials, you're inventing a code that you can follow, like an electrical code, a plumbing code. Anything that works is codified. The white supremacists don't believe in hanging on to any kind of tradition that doesn't solve their problems, something that non-white people need to learn. Non-white people go around bragging about their customs and their traditions, going way back. Well, the traditions, the customs, the culture of black people is a failed culture, tradition, custom. All of them. Why? Because we became subject to the system of white supremacy. You can't reach back and find nothing where white supremacy was defeated, because white supremacy is still here. And black people are still complaining about it without inventing a code. We have to start from scratch, something we've never even attempted to do. A code for what? For counteracting white supremacy. We have codes and customs and cultures that we brag about without any justification that makes logical sense for bragging about failed cultures, but we talk about our traditions. Proud, stick out our chest. Our traditions were no match for a racist code, and all of the evidence proves that. So we are in the process now, here on this program, of trying to invent a counter-racist code and replace it with a code of justice, something we've never attempted seriously to do, but something that's got to be done in order to have the type of world that we should have and should have had in the first place. That's what the textbook for victims of white supremacy is supposed to be designed to help us do as individuals each and every day, wherever we happen to be on the planet. And you can get the book by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen, you'll see most likely 3 volumes there. I recommend the 2016 edition of the updated, revised edition of the 1984 edition, which is the one with the computer design on the cover. You might see that there. And that's the 1984 original edition. The updated version is a compensatory counter-racist code, and you'll see 2016 there, the copyright on it. Also, there's an addition to that. It's basically the same book, but it's in 2 volumes. And the other is a word guide that came out in 2010, years previous to the revised expanded edition. And it shows you how to use words, how not to use words, what questions to ask when other people use certain terms. And that's because a lot of what the white supremacists do, they do it through the use of words. So you have to know what they are doing and understand what they're doing. And so it's a lot of mostly what questions to ask about certain words that are used that are confusing, because the white supremacists in the English language use a lot of confusing words. So the book is designed to work you through all of that. Like the person saying they're going to be facing a judge. You can become familiar with certain words and certain things to do out of the textbook that will help guide you along. Go to producejustice.com to get these volumes. Producejustice.com.
Okay. Mr. Fuller, I am, after the program, I am going to call you and perhaps give you a number that I'm not going to repeat over the air. So when we conclude this program, just hang on, and then I will call you, and we can conduct that business there. Okay, let's see. We got exactly 7 minutes, and we are going to go to the 704, and I believe that's Tex in Charlotte. Okay, let's see if I can get you in here. Did I get you? Okay, there we go. Good morning, and what is your question for Mr. Fuller?
This is TX Green.
Oh, a TX.
And,
okay, yeah, TX. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all good. Listen, your last response was low-hanging fruit for my question, since I did want to address the original code and ask Mr. Fuller if there were what 2 things could he cite that in the original code, because racism and white supremacy continues to be refined, what are some things that he had to go and update in the more recent versions of the code? Because when the original came out, you've noticed how things have moved, and therefore it warranted an update. And then the last thing is just to compliment Mr. Fuller on for phenomenal work.
Well, if I understand the question, the white supremacists have not done a whole lot to refine the system of racism that they haven't been doing for some time. One thing they're doing, they're causing more confusion. That's a part of their refinement. That's the biggest part, causing more confusion. And how they do this is go through the system of economics. Economics meaning seeing how non-white people use their time and energy, and they get, they're already in control of it. So they say, okay, we're going to have black people buying this and buying that, and we're going to tell them what they ought to have. We're going to have black people lined up not only just to get food, but get their nails done. We're going to put emphasis on having them do things that are not going to be of any lasting real value, but they consider it to be valuable. Why? Because we'll tell them that this is the latest thing. You need to have this, and I'll sell it to you, all right? And you need to have this type of food or that type of this and that and the other. I got a brand new holiday coming up for you. And during this day, we're going to have some huge sales, and we want you to come out. That's under economics, use of time and energy and money. And they steer black people in those directions. And they're just doing more of it in every area of activity. We're going to refine your sexual activities, the 8th area of activity. And you say, refine it? Say, yeah, we got some new ideas about what sex is and what it isn't. I mean, you people are so backward. I mean, there's varieties of sex that you never heard about. And I'm going to show you all of them. I'm going to introduce you to sexual things that you've never even thought about. And you're going to be thinking about in 5 years, what a wonderful improvement this is. Why? Because I say so, Negro, with your dumb self. And I'm going to steer you in all of this scatter sexualization, new types of sex here, new types of sex there. Hey, have you looked at this one? Have you examined this one? Hey, come on over here and take part. I mean, you don't want to get behind now. You black people always want to be up on the latest thing. You better get over here and get in on this. See, and they're doing that in every area of activity. In religion. Hey, have you heard of this new religion? I mean, it's Christianity now. And it's also Islam. And also it's Judaism. It's a package deal. Have you black people heard that? Come on over here. I got it for you. I got it waiting for you. I know you better bust this door down and get over here quick, because everybody will catch on to it and you'll get lost in the swamp. You want to be on the cutting edge. You black people always want to be on the cutting edge of everything. You're always looking for something new. Well, I got everything new for you. That's the white supremacists. That's the refinement stage. So they're ramping that up in every area of activity, like they always have. And they actually are having arguments with the white people who want to do things the old-fashioned way. Hey, don't explain nothing to them black people. Let's call them the N-word and hit them over the head. That's the way I want to do it. They say, well, that'll work in the short run. That won't work in the long run. Because in the long run, the refinement system of white supremacy is to capture their minds. Because when you capture a person's that person's mind, the body will follow every time. Get their minds.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Fuller, that was outstanding. Okay, thank you for all the callers that you called in. That person, the 503, call in next week, because we simply do not have time to get to your question or your comment. Those in the chat room, I got it all over the board. Wow. It's all over the board. Anybody can look at that right now. But thank you anyway. All the Gmailers, thank you. To my producers, the Gatewood brothers, Moon Pie, Robert, thank you. Mr. Fuller, most of all, thank you. Thank you. And don't forget,
and
after
I
the show,
thank everybody, because I need everybody.
Yes, sir. And I'm going to call you right after the program. So, anybody, thanks for listening. I will try to get better for next week's show. Thanks again for listening. And everybody have a good day. Bye now.
Thank you.
Protect your rights and fight the insurance companies for everything you're entitled to. North Carolina's government